Try looking at the list of the highest grossing movies in global box office history. You will see that most of them are familiar American franchises: Avatar, Avengers, Star Wars, Spider-Man. Even when there are exceptions, like some big Asian blockbusters climbing very high in recent years. The big picture still shows one thing: Hollywood does not only make movies. Hollywood makes the standard for the whole movie industry. But here is what makes the story interesting. Europe is actually where cinema first became a mass cultural phenomenon. Europe once had studios, theater chains, and technology that were ahead of the United States. There was even a time when European films took a very large share of the international market. So what happened? Why did Europe not create its own version of Hollywood? And why is it that even today, European cinema is still strong, still produces masterpieces, but struggles to become one single global dominant machine like the American one? The answer lies in many things: economics, geography, war, market rules, distribution systems, and one key point that people often ignore. Hollywood is not just a place that makes movies, it is an industrial model. Part 1. Europe used to lead. At the end of the 19th century, cinema exploded in Europe. Paris hosted the first commercial screenings. France, Italy, Denmark, Britain, Germany all developed very fast. At that time, European films did not only play at home, they were exported. They were even sold to the United States. Europe was ahead in many areas: early visual effects, new storytelling styles, historical epics, newsreels shown in theaters, serial films, and especially feature films, movies that run longer than 1 hour, the kind of film we now simply call a movie. Put simply, Europe used to be the center, and Hollywood was not yet the king of cinema. Part 2. America won because it has a huge home market. Movies are a high-cost game. The longer and more complex a movie is, the more money you need. Money for sets, money for actors, money for technology, and money for marketing. If you want to make a profit, you need to sell a lot of tickets. You need your movie to play in a lot of theaters. And you need to repeat that again and again. The United States has an advantage that Europe does not: one big and unified domestic market, one main language, one distribution network that can scale across the whole country. Europe is different. Europe is many countries, many languages, many censorship rules, many cultural tastes, many separate theater systems. So what is the result? With the same budget, an American movie has a better chance to earn back its costs at home. European movies often need to rely more on exports, but exports are blocked by language barriers and fragmented markets. This is the first foundation of the gap. Part 3. Hollywood is more than California sunshine. Hollywood is an industry cluster. People like to say, Hollywood grew thanks to the California sun. That is true. In the early days, cameras needed a lot of light. Shooting outdoors was easier. Being able to shoot all year round was even better. California has the right weather. It has many types of landscapes: mountains, ocean, desert, city, and the distance between locations is not too large. But there was another important reason: patents and monopolies. In the early years in the United States, many film technologies were controlled by patent groups. This created a lot of pressure on independent filmmakers. They were sued. They were restricted from using equipment. They were controlled by license rules. When they were squeezed too hard, they did something very practical. They moved away. They looked for a place where it was easier to breathe. And when many people move to the same place, an industry cluster is born. Actors live close to the studios. Technicians live close to props and equipment. Directors can meet producers more easily. Talent moves quickly within the area. Costs go down, speed goes up. Hollywood starts to gain a growing advantage over time. An advantage from concentration, not only from art. Part 4. War broke Europe and pushed America forward. The biggest turning point was World War I. In 1914, the assassination in Sarajevo triggered the war. Europe fell into 4 years of chaos. Many people think war stopped Europe from making films. Not exactly. During the war, people still went to the movies. Governments even used films for propaganda. But the war destroyed something more important. It broke the common market. It broke trade. It broke flows of capital. It broke cross-border cooperation. Meanwhile, the United States suffered very little damage on its own soil. The American movie industry now had the conditions to move into a true industrial model. Feature films became the standard. Budgets grew. Marketing grew. The game became a big bet game. Whoever has the larger market has an advantage. Whoever has cheaper capital has an advantage. Whoever has the stronger production cluster has an advantage. Hollywood had all three. Part 5. Hollywood won with distribution, not only with content. This is the deciding factor. It is not only about making good films. It is about getting those films into theaters, taking the prime showtimes, and controlling the flow of money. The big American studios built closed systems. They produced the movies. They distributed the movies. And for a period, they even directly controlled many theater chains. When you control distribution, you control the way your product reaches the market. You can give priority to your own films. You can push rival films into bad time slots. You can release your films on thousands of screens at the same time. That is a kind of power that Europe has a hard time matching at a continent-wide scale. Because Europe does not have one unified theater network like the American one. Each country has its own system. Part 6. Germany was once the biggest chance, then it was broken too. If Europe ever came close to having a Hollywood-level force, it was Germany in the Weimar era. Germany had large studios, strong companies, a generation of talented directors, and a film style that influenced cinema for decades. But Germany faced economic crisis, hyperinflation, lack of stable capital. The film industry fell easily into debt. With weak finance, you become dependent on stronger partners. Then more foreign films came in. The screen time for domestic films shrank, revenue dropped, and the downward spiral continued. Then politics stepped in. Content was controlled, censorship increased, and a wave of talent left Europe for the United States. Once creative people had moved to Hollywood, Hollywood became even stronger. Then World War II came. Infrastructure was destroyed, studios were bombed. Europe had to rebuild from scratch. Part 7. After the war, Europe chose a different path. After 1945, Europe did not disappear from cinema. On the contrary, many national film industries recovered quickly. Italy had a very strong period. France built support systems. Britain became an important production center. But Europe followed a different philosophy. It treated film as culture that needed protection, not just as a product that must always maximize revenue. So Europe used subsidies, film funds, production incentives to protect local voices, to keep language diversity, to support authors and schools of style. This model produced many great films, many major directors, many works with real depth. But it is hard for this model to create one single megacenter. It is hard to concentrate giant amounts of capital in only one place. It is hard to build one continent-wide distribution system like Hollywood, and it is hard to standardize one type of mass storytelling for every market, the way the United States does. Part 8. Today, Hollywood is still the main hub, but production is global. One interesting thing today, Hollywood is no longer only in Hollywood. Many blockbusters are shot in Europe, in Britain, in Hungary, in the Czech Republic, in Spain, because Europe has good studio infrastructure, strong technical crews, and attractive production incentives. In other words, Europe may not have its own Hollywood, but Europe has become part of the Hollywood supply chain. At the same time, the world has changed. Asia has grown fast. Domestic markets in some Asian countries are now big enough to support their own blockbusters. And streaming has changed how movies are distributed. Hollywood is still powerful, but the game is no longer as one-sided as in the last century. Conclusion: why Europe has no Hollywood. It is not because Europe lacks talent. It is not because Europe has no film history. Europe has no Hollywood for four main reasons. First, the market is fragmented and multi-language. Second, Hollywood formed an extremely concentrated industry cluster. Third, war broke Europe's momentum at the exact time when America was speeding up. Fourth, Hollywood locked in its advantage through global distribution and marketing. And maybe there is one last reason. Europe never truly chose to become another Hollywood. Europe chose cultural diversity. It chose many smaller centers. It chose many different voices. If you think this story is worth thinking about, please hit like and subscribe to the channel, because stories about economics, history, and how the world works almost always contain more surprises than we expect.